Clubhouse.
My dearest Spencer, I've reached New York. Soon I board a train for Billings. In a week's time, I shall stand on your doorstep. I dream of mountains now. I dream of snow and a fire to warm us. It has been months since I have tasted your lips or felt the fire of your touch. And yet, it is this last week that seems the most unbearable. Are we not done proving that we have earned each other? What calamity awaits to keep me from you? What fresh hell has the devil devised? I suppose it is not anticipation at all. It is fear. It is absolute terror that the world will not let me have you.
Welcome to Pod Clubhouse's coverage of 1923, a prequel series to Yellowstone. This is Caroline.
And this is Mike. Tonight we're discussing Episode 3 of Season 2, Wrap Thee in Terror. Tonight's episode was written by Taylor Sheridan and directed by Ben Richardson.
Just a community note, please join us on Facebook in the Yellowstone 1923, 1883, and 4/6's discussion and news group to discuss 1923 and the whole universe of Yellowstone shows. You guys, we assume you've watched this episode, so if you haven't, please hit pause, go watch it, and come on back. We're not going to go through this step by step and recap the episode, but we certainly don't want to spoil anything for you. So go watch and come on back.
Caroline, a lot to unpack in this one, though not a ton happened, or at least a lot of history-adjacent things happened. The entire Ellis Island subplot with Alex and Spencer just moving along a little bit at the end, and obviously Elizabeth and Jack things. This was an interesting episode for a third one in the season, but while I was watching it, it made me ask myself, and I want to ask you first, are you happy with the pacing this season? At Episode 3, Alex is in the United States, Spencer's clearing Fort Worth. Like, we're moving towards Bozeman. Is this where you expected to be? Are you happy with how things are going?
Boy, those are good questions. I am okay with the pacing right now. I'm glad that we've had some time jumping. Like, we didn't have to go through every step with each character. We are jumping. We are taking some bigger steps with each of them. So that's positive. But I mean, the anticipation for Spencer and Alex to get back together and the anticipation of Spencer just to get back to the Yellowstone, I mean, it is starting to get palpable for me where I'm like, come on already. So, I mean, I know through the grapevine, we've heard rumors that Spencer doesn't make it back there till Episode 6. So we were sort of tempered in our expectations, but at the same time, every time that one of our characters mouths off to somebody and creates an obstacle for themselves, I just want to shake them by the shoulders and be like, you could have been there so much quicker if you would knock it off. Make better choices. Stop talking back to everyone.
I mean, I think that has to be a central discussion when we get to discussing Alex and then Spencer. Alex in this episode, and, you know, no spoilers for Episode 4, Spencer in Episode 4 just can't get out of their own way to make this very long, arduous journey, which in the best of times is difficult and dangerous and long. They seem to be going out of their way to make it longer and more worse for themselves.
More worse.
Not just worser, more worse.
Nice.
It's pretty crazy. I agree with you, though. I'm actually pretty happy with the pacing. I think from where they left, you know, being ditched in Italy and being separated forcibly, having to jump off a ship and then recalculating, and now we've moved ahead 4 months in the timeline, roughly. This episode is great because we finally get an official date on where we are via Alex's manifest tag and the other immigrants with her at Ellis Island. You could see stamped on there. It says March 22nd or March 23rd. The more I looked at it, the second two looks maybe like a 3 to me, but it's either March 22nd or March 23rd of 1924. So we were right that the show had picked up about 1 to 2 months from where the finale was, and then you put a month at sea for Alex. which one of the interrogation people mentioned to her, that she was in a boat for a month. And so we wind up in March. So we were pretty good on with our estimate of how much the show had moved forward from the end of season 1 into season 2. And now in episode 3, we've jumped forward even more. So we are very much entering the spring part of the timeline. So happy with that. You mentioned the grapevine about episode 6. That's without spoilers. We don't know. We actually haven't seen through episode 6. We have seen beyond this episode, but we have not seen beyond, we have not seen to episode 6. So we cannot confirm or deny that. That is not us, violating some spoiler. It's just what the internet buzz is. But I feel like this show is moving at a clip that I am fine with, but really feels like it has to have another season to it. I'm okay with the pacing as long as they're not going to just try and wrap up this show by episode 8. Unless those episodes 6, 7, and 8 are going to be like 2-hour episodes each. If they're not getting a season 3, then this is not going to be satisfying.
Well, and it's because everything has been leading up to Spencer stepping foot back on the ranch. And so if you only have that for 2 or 3 episodes of an entire series of this section of the series, if you will, where you've watched for 2 full seasons just for essentially what's going to happen in those couple of episodes, I could see where audiences might have, kind of a gripe with that. But generally, I want to have faith that they could make those 3 episodes so amazing and so climactic that maybe it will be okay. But I'm with you. I mean, I'm holding my breath that we get a big enough payout.
There's going to be a discussion in episode 4 that deals with Spencer and whether or not the question of his question and his arc in the show is really not about being at the ranch, but maybe the journey back to the ranch. People say it's not the destination, it's the journey, and that's where you learn things. There's maybe a discussion where for Spencer that really is actually important and maybe the point, but for us, the viewers, and certainly for Kara and Jacob and the future of the Dutton Yellowstone Ranch, the point is not Spencer's journey home.
It's not Spencer's journey.
It is Spencer being home and bringing the whoop ass.
It's not his big growth. It's not his exciting times.
Right. It's not his, I'm not in Africa anymore and this isn't the world I left. But again, we're getting ahead of ourselves here. We don't have to do that. We'll have that discussion next episode. But next question, because this has been something you and I have been struggling with in this season. And really, it's coming off of the back of the Native American Christian missionary school plotline from season 1, which was so hard to watch. But I justified it and I was okay with it because it was really shedding light on a real thing of history that very few people know about. And so as brutal as it was to watch, it had important educational historical value to it. Now, with that set up, I wanted to ask you, with respect to the violence and the abuse and the brutal treatment that we're seeing every week, whether it is Elizabeth being restrained and given shots, or Alex having to fear for her safety, or being demeaned and humiliated at Ellis Island, or that man staring at her as she goes into the bathroom at the end of this episode, or the stuff that will God happened to Tiona, or that happened to the Comanches just for being Indian, in this world for Marshall Kent and Father Renaud. Like, it's relentless. And so where do we draw the line between educational history and or serving the plot and violence related to those things on one hand, and then excessive violence? It's just too much, even if it is educational and helpful to the plot. It's just excessive, the Whitfield and the prostitute and the sex workers storylines. Or is it just all too much at this point? Is the show just losing the audience because it's just giving us too much, whether it is helpful to the plot or historically accurate? Is it still just too much? Are we not getting the underlying themes from it because all we're getting are the violence and the brutality? Well,
I definitely think that each storyline has its own merits, some a lot and some very, very little. For me, I think I've been very clear that the prostitution entire storyline with Whitfield, unless one of those prostitutes end up killing Whitfield, if the whole point is just to teach us that he is a bad guy who likes to control people and manipulate people, we already got that. So I don't need anything else out of that storyline. When you're talking about Tiona, I winced so badly when we were going back through the rewatch, But I agree with you in that storyline. I was not aware of so much of what they were showing. And I feel like as an audience member, they could have been a little bit more judicious with the sort of the like cutting away more often for me. Like, I feel like they could have, stopped some scenes a little bit short, maybe just have some audio or whatever. I don't need to see every gory detail, but I do understand that they have been consistent in terms of, going all the way back to 1883 with showing how brutal life was during that time. And certainly I think that they're doing a very good job of highlighting, putting a big spotlight on women in terms of everything that we would be putting up with during this time. And for a lot of this, like our lack of recourse, everyone being so aware of the abuse, and yet it's just a part of the culture of the time, part of society. Like, if you can be at a train station and somebody can be like, basically, you're going to get mugged. And like, we all kind of know that. And we just kind of all accept that, you've got to do what you can to protect yourself. But we all pretty much know you're going to be attacked. I feel like that's kind of this huge, for me, because I have this whole thing. I don't know how you feel about this, but I always feel so funny when I see like banners and stuff that are like women's self-defense classes, because I always feel like that's like, hey, women, we know you're being attacked. And rather than have some sort of like other class where it's like men's anger control or whatever impulse control classes, instead we advertise very openly, hey, women, we all know you're going to be attacked. Come pay money and we'll teach you how to defend yourself. I get that same vibe off of this show, which is like, you just better come in here. No, we all know you're going to be attacked. We all know that life is going to be awful. I do think, obviously, Taylor steps over the line quite a few times. How do you feel as a man watching it? I mean, I know I have a very soft heart, and I know I have trouble watching abuse just generally, but the back-to-back abuse, almost in every storyline, it is very taxing on me as a viewer.
I think it's tough, because I think the show does do the viewers a service by bringing a sense of realism often, like the Native American missionary school storyline from season 1. And I think there's actually a great example of it in this episode. The stuff we see at Ellis Island, I've spent too long going down rabbit holes and reading people's recollections and family recollections and genealogy stories of people going through Ellis Island and being on Ellis Island's website. And there's a PBS documentary about it. And I've accumulated a lot of information about a little bit about what the process was like. And I think the show, for a fictional historical fiction drama that needs to move things along and show high points, but still get it all kind of done in short order, I actually think did a pretty good job of showing the experience. There's a lot of historically accurate things that they show in this episode, which I'll go through in a little bit. But here's an example of where then it crosses over a line for me. The medical exams. Alex being too sassy and asking too many questions, which just prolongs it. And I understand her dignity insisting she ask these questions, but also read the room and the vibe. If your point is to get through this and get on with it, don't question having to pick the stool up and raise it over your head. But that's not my point. My point was when the doctor discovers she's pregnant by palpitating her uterus and from what I read, that is a way to, that's accurate, that he would be able to, even just by feeling around, it's possible that he could discover she's pregnant. The gynecologist thing comes in and, before the doctor leaves, he marks on her PG, like markers her stomach PG. Now, those markings were accurate. Those markings did happen, but they happened out in the hall, and they happened as chalk on people's clothing or on the medical chart that the nurse was very clearly holding and taking notes on when the doctor was doing the examination. So use the capital P little g. That was an actual thing that was marked at Ellis Island. I cannot find any record that they would marker the woman's body with that. Well, we don't need that. Just show.
You know what, though?
You know what I mean? It's like you've
I'm gonna
crossed
give,
the line.
though,
Now I'm losing you because now you're just humiliating her for no
definitely
reason.
that. But also, I would say, like, we could easily see that there could be some sort of symbolism of whatnot when we're talking about all our ranchers and branding and all this kind of stuff. I think that there's something to me, as maybe just because I live in Texas, maybe because I'm got my like sort of Wild West glasses on. I could see some connection there of like treating people like cattle, you know, when they're coming through Ellis Island and literally branding people with these markers and stuff. Like I could see how all of this is part of it, but I'm with you. I mean, for me, it's a lot. It's a lot. And it's in every storyline. Like, I feel like we don't have any respite. Like there's terror going on in every storyline. So this whole wrap thee in terror, boy, I mean, I think this is a very apt name for this episode.
So let's talk about the title. So it feels like a quote to me, right? The thee is too much for a Taylor Sheridan. It seems to me to come up with wrap thee in terror. Too old timey. So I went looking and digging to see if I could figure out if it was pulled from anything. And I found, because of Google and its Google Library Translate program and scanning program, I found a copy of an anthology from 1864, an anthology edited by one Henry Jenkins Esquire. It was called Scraps. It is hundreds of pages long, and it is like excerpts of literary things. I don't think Henry wrote any of these things, but they are all like unattributed poems and prose. There's some Shakespeare in here. Anyway, on page 95 of this anthology, there is a poem called Death. I'm not going to read the entire poem, but I found it up. I'll post it on the Facebook page so you could see it and see maybe if you guys think that this relates to it and this is where he's pulling from. I'm going to read just a little bit. O death, how mysterious thy nature and power! How dreaded in health is thy still solemn hour! Yet sickness and weakness thy coming await, and in hope and in confidence enter thy gate. Then why would we wrap thee in terror and gloom? Though dark be thy shadow, thou king of the tomb, faith has shed over the valley a hope and a ray, and has told that beyond there is beauty and day. It's this idea of wrestling with death and fighting with it, but maybe there's some beauty that's going to come out on the other end of it. I'm not sure. I'm still processing it, but it was the only thing in the internet, the entirety of the internet, I could find this very specific phrase. And so maybe I'm looking for meaning in it. I don't know. Maybe it is just the fact that, like you said, there is just terror everywhere we turn. And so maybe you lean into it, and whether you want to wrap yourself in it or not, you are wrapped in the terror because it is literally consuming you on all ends for everyone, or at least all of the female characters, except for Kara. Elizabeth is wrapped in her own terror.
Oh, I think Kara's wrapped in her own terror. I mean, she hides it very, very well, but I mean, I think that her day-to-day is insane, you know?
So yeah, I don't know. Maybe that is where the title is being pulled from, but I thought that was a little bit interesting. Let's talk about Alex and her trip. Let's start with a basic question, because I think this is a thesis question that we have to talk about, and this kind of goes to my idea of the episode themes. Episode themes for this, I had half-baked plans that come with dangerous consequences and unbearable suffering. Spencer has his own, but not really in this episode. But this is Alex's episode, where a very ill-informed plan is really coming to fruition about how dangerous this undertaking was for her. So my question to you, we discussed a bit earlier in the first episode and in the second episode, but seeing how this episode plays out for Alex, was she just beyond naive in her runaway plan from London or from England, not stopping to make any plans, or refusing first class before setting out, spending 4 months at home or spending 3 months at home and never looking at a map or a globe to see how far she really was from Bozeman, how far New York was from Bozeman. When she finally clears Ellis Island and is dealing with the newspaper man, she knows the name, but she never has looked at it. They're a wealthy family. I'm sure there's a fancy globe there somewhere. At least the idea of Montana, even if Bozeman wasn't there, would be mapped out on a globe. even
you sound like a frustrated dad. You're like, it's
so much. If this was Tom, I would be shaking my head. So like, what? There is no plan though. Even the cold question. But
you have to put some context in that we don't have the internet. We don't have easy communication between anyone, right? Phone calls, text messages, reading the news on Facebook, what have you. Like all the things that we have where we get like all of our information. These people have no way to do that. And she can't ask around to like get information, even just from other people. So she really is stuck. I agree with you that she spent an awful long time at home being upset when it seems like, the time is of the essence here. We need to get going. But at the same time, I just think like, where would you start if you couldn't ask anybody and you didn't have a phone and you had no internet and you had nothing? I appreciate you saying the globe. I don't know how updated a globe would be for the United States because we're still very much unfolding what that all looks like right now. But
there are newspapers. I mean, even
I want to think she has access to that stuff, but it was a little unclear. I mean, as she obviously got out into the world and was doing more, sure. But when she was first making the plan and she was just sort of like in her house, I wasn't really sure. Like, is she okay to like be reading the paper and be doing those types of things? It gave this air of like almost that she was like locked in her room, even though I do not think in any way she was.
It felt self-imposed, locked in her room, which makes it inexcusable to not even to try. Like, I get it. It is not 2025. We're talking about 100 years ago, but 100 years ago was not the Dark Ages.
Right. And she is well traveled. We know that.
Right. She understood the geography of Africa. And,
right.
I imagine Africa has to have less updated PR and tourism pamphlets. This is where it becomes a problem. She says to the interviewer at the end of this episode, America markets itself in every magazine in England, in every newspaper. There are ads for America and its freedom and its glory. Okay, so you are reading that stuff. You are accessing
But is it
stuff.
good information or is it just propaganda advertising? Like, those are two different things. Like, you're kind of claiming that there might be like really good info in that write-up.
I'm not even saying she needs good info. I'm saying she has no info. This is all very this is all very 2020 hindsight, because an episode ago we were like, well, maybe turning down first class because you don't want to run into your dead
No, I think it was a terrible idea.
We talked about that. We think that was a little hubristic for this journey, which again, it wasn't just too naive to think that I can stow away in steerage, because now we're having consequences. It wasn't just that she avoided people, but she had to be at the bottom of the ship with the storm. Okay, maybe you don't think about that. But now it's coming to real fruition, because if she had been in first or second class, those people are medically inspected on the ship as it's pulling into New York Harbor. They don't go to Ellis Island. They get their papers done at the embassy beforehand. The people who are in steerage and in tourist class, they go to Ellis Island. When she asked the man on board, how come they're free to wander? And he says, because they got their papers done in Ellis, at the consulate beforehand. They also were medically cleared. Like, all of that, they skip all of that. That's all done for them because they were in first class, which not everyone can afford first class, but she probably could have afforded first class if she had put some more thought into the plan. And again, 2020 hindsight, but it's really having consequences now. I'm going to steal the family jewels, sell them for a pittance, get on a boat, go across the ocean over a month, and then what? Then, it's the South Park thing. Steal the socks, the underwear, ... profit. This is Alex's plan. Gonna get on a boat, ... be in Bozeman. Even the clip that we opened this episode with, she says, in a week, I'll be at your doorstep. Girlfriend.
Yeah, I chuckled when we heard that.
Even in a perfect world, lady, you are not going to be at the doorstep of Bozeman.
Yeah.
It's going to take you a day to go from Bozeman to Paradise Valley. So,
I agree with you very much that for all of her travels and for all of her education, which she shows off in this episode, there's a real lack of just savvy in the world. world. And we know when she was with her girlfriends and she met Spencer, I mean, she was like saying stuff about America and she was talking like she knew what was going on in the world. She didn't seem so naive. She seemed to understand how travel worked. She understood about getting married with the ship's captain. She understood that messages could be sent by a captain. Like, she knew a lot of stuff about the world, it seemed. And so then all of a sudden for her to be making these choices that seem awfully naive and really inexperienced, you're right that those parts, I mean, it's difficult to watch because you're like, she's been presented as a pretty capable character who is knowledgeable about the world. So now you're like, it feels a little disappointing because you're like, man, I thought you were pretty with it. And you seem to be getting caught up, you know, at kind of, I don't want to say basic things, but I am a little frowning at her, and I don't know exactly what this thing would be because I know we have a lot of things like pepper spray and, you know, little, you know, knives and stuff that can like hook on your keychain and all kinds of things that you can use now. I'm a little surprised she had nothing to protect herself and thought nothing about that portion, you know, because she is a traveler. We cannot think for a second that her time in Africa, she didn't need to be cautious about her money.
Awareness.
Awareness of your
situation.
surroundings, awareness of like, you know, being, there's pickpockets everywhere in every country and stuff. So, and we know she's traveled. So why not more awareness of that? That I would say, right. I don't know what's going on.
They took a step back, right? They stepped her back from being the worldly person we were introduced in season 1 with how she is encountering this new world. Even the idea of the cold where she says to the ticket man, you know, I'm from London, I know cold, sir. And he's like, that ain't cold, lady. Like you can't book a ticket all the way to your destination because of possible snow. Like, you don't even know. But we joked about that when she was getting on the ship with Jennifer. You know, she was like, I hope I'm warm enough. She's like, oh, how cold? It can't be any colder than this. That looked like a mild day than what I'm having right now in upstate New York. Like, what are you talking about? It's infuriating even, but part and parcel of this is when she comes to the first person in the registry hall at Ellis Island, and he says, you speak English? Of course I speak English. We invented the English. We invented English. I am English. We invented English. Wrong tone. Sense the room. This is serious business. This is miserable business. You are one of 5,000 to 10,000 people in this cattle hall right now.
And you need something from them. I mean, let's just start there. Just start from there. I mean, if you're the person who needs to be accepted, why are you starting off by being like mouthy to anybody? And this is not, please, I am a woman who speaks her mind at all times. I thought of you
instantly because this is exactly how you would be
but I wouldn't talk like this.
Right. You would be somebody. Like this. You would be like this at the store where you wanted something from the back room, not at Ellis Island trying to get into the country when you're alone.
No, and that's the thing. Like, there's things that I feel like she could have done all along the way. And I know, I mean, you have to create some amount of conflict for her, right? You can't just have her just breeze on through. But I don't want them to betray our characters' personalities or established characteristics in order to create an obstacle for them. Don't do that to us, you know? It's important, though. It's very important to me that, Taylor, if you are going to sit there and you are going to say, this is a character who you've now known for an entire season and you watched all these adventures happening, you watched all these things going on with her, I know we have to break her down. Like, I want to be clear. I understand that we have to take her down a notch. She was, you know, this wealthy woman in high society, and she is going to end up on a ranch. So this journey has to break her down. And we've seen this happening with Elizabeth as well, where you take somebody who is highly educated, has money, you know, has had life experiences, but they really never got to know what the world is really, really like until they're having to get their hands dirty. And this is like their moment of breaking them down, where we have to figure out like which one of these characters are going to be broken down to the point of never getting back up, like say maybe Zane, or which one of these characters are going to be broken down and then they rise up and they're so much stronger and better for it. I think Alex is going to be one of those characters, but it's really hard to watch her go through this.
It is. And I love her character, and I find it.
She was a Spitfire, man.
It is charismatic, and she is the exact person that people are drawn to in a room. But because of that, she is world traveled, and I guess my feeling was, she doesn't always need, her character doesn't always need to be at the 10, right? There have to be layers to sensing the tone of the room, and this is another aspect of situational awareness and being aware of your surroundings, like watching your money or avoiding lions in Africa or whatever. You know, she's wearing light colors. She stood out like the girl in the red coat, you know, in like a black and white movie. She was wearing these light colors. Everyone else is wearing these drab, dark colors. There was no adjustment to her environment here, which again, she has an indelible spirit. And I have no doubt that on the other end of this journey, no matter how hellish and horrible it gets, there will be that spark in her. She's not Elizabeth. And this will be a discussion we have later on in another episode. Give me an Alex over an Elizabeth every day, because I think they are both encountering life from a place that they didn't start in and didn't expect to be, and being broken down by the life. And I think Alex is much better equipped to handle it. And I'm enjoying watching her go through it, because I know that there will be resilience in the end. Whereas I'm very out of patience with Elizabeth. I'm not with Alex, but because I'm watching it, I'm sitting here like a classic TV viewer. I'm yelling at the screen like, no, don't sass about the English. You need this guy to stamp your papers. You need to get through this. Don't question why you have to pick up the stool. That's of the medical test. That's the least of your worries right now. Please do what you have to do to get on to your next step. You are only at the beginning. This is very dad of me. I felt very dad watching all of this go on.
Well, what I was missing is that she is a charming person as well. And it was like all of her charm was just thrown out the window. Now, I understand. We all understand when you're on some sort of treacherous journey that you're exhausted, right? And you're tired and you're feeling like crap and whatever. So maybe your charm is a little less. But I was really surprised she didn't even try to play that card. She just went right for sort of this nasty, like, do you know who I am kind of attitude that was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You put yourself in this spot. You're coming out with the people from steerage. You look suspicious with this story. You know, everything that you're saying doesn't make sense. Like, have some sense of where you are and what you're doing. And again, that you're asking them for something. So you can't be coming in so indignant. I didn't like this version of her.
Let's talk about a couple of quick details, just because I can't help it. I love adding in a little bit of the history when the show gets it right. It's one of the things I love about this show and shows like The Gilded Age and obviously 1883 before this. When they're pulling into New York Harbor, there's a shot of the New York skyline from the harbor, which is one of the best views of the city today and 100 years ago. But in the background, if you're looking at the shot, just to the left of center, there's a tall building. That's the Woolworth building, which at the time, from 1913 until 1929, was the tallest building in the world. So I think it was a very cool detail that they included that in the shot. And the Woolworth building is just a very cool building that's still standing today. It is definitely not the tallest building in the world. I think it's the 7th tallest or 17th tallest. It's in like the top 20 still in New York, but it's nowhere near the tallest building in the world anymore. And it would be supplanted by 40 Wall Street in 1929 and the Chrysler Building in 1930, and then the Empire State Building opens in 1931. So it's in the middle of being the tallest building in the world, but still a very cool little shot and detail that they added. It has a very recognizable top to it, where it kind of almost looks like do you remember the movie Big?
Sure.
This is such a random tangent. When he's doing the toy testing and they have like a skyscraper transformer. I don't know if you remember this. And he's like, and Tom Hanks being a little boy.
Yeah. No, I totally remember
He's like,
that
I don't
toy.
get what I would do with this building. Like, okay, it's a robot, but then it's like a skyscraper. The skyscraper always reminds me of like the Woolworth building. It has a very identifiable top to it. So anyway, cool little detail. The boat that she's being ferried in on is the Thomas C. Millard ferry. This was a real boat. It was put into service in 1905. It was converted to a ferry boat to Ellis Island. It was eventually renamed Owana in 1929, and it was abandoned in 1937. And I'll put this on our Facebook page. I texted these to you. I think I did. But there are actually pictures of the Thomas C. Millard in service at Ellis Island with immigrants getting on and getting off. Like there are pictures that exist where you could see Thomas C. Millard. like historical pictures
cool.
from like the 20s. It's very cool. It's very cool that they brought this boat forward into the real story.
And, you know, compliments to Taylor. We can complain about certain things, but we'll definitely give him compliments when he does do stuff like that and gets it in there and gets it totally right. And, you know, makes you feel like, oh, when you do those deep dives, like how completely satisfying is it to find like a photograph and be like, hey, it's real.
Yeah, just like the manifest tags, like you'll notice all the immigrants were wearing, all the steerage immigrants, again, first and second class passengers didn't have these tags. The people who had to go to Ellis Island did. Those were called manifest tags or ID tags, essentially, that they all had clipped to their coats or whatever. The numbers on them all correspond to the big number. So on Alex's, there was a big 6 and a little 4. So the 6 was her manifest number. The 4 was her list number. So when you get to the registry hall, you were sat in a row with the same people who had the same manifest page with you. So she was in a row. If you look, they should have been, if they did this correctly, everyone in the row with her should have had a 6. I know the row behind her, one of the rows behind her, I think it was like a 29. There were a bunch of 29s all sitting next to each other. And then once you were in that row, you were led to one of 16 desks at peak times. It could be 16 desks that were open, which held your particular list page from your manifest page. So she was list page number 4 from manifest page number 6. And that was how the ordering system would go in that giant registry hall. That's how they, and so when she gets to the first guy, you'll see they all had the big manifest books in front of them. That's how they were able to match you to the manifest they received from the ship to what they were expecting to coming in. That's where they would match your name. That's where they would match your destination, the boat you would come on, when you had left, when you had arrived, all that information. It was on those manifest tags, and then you were given your inspection tag from there. But that was all really how it went. So it was actually a very good recreation of not only the manifest tag. I have copies of one from a passenger from 1922 or 1923 I was able to find, and it looks exactly like the tag that she was wearing, which again, we were able to pull out a date, March 22nd or 23rd, 1924. So again, just really cool how they run that whole scene. So did you notice, Caroline, when she goes to the first man, the one where she sasses about, we invented English, and he's like, we have a special boat for people who give us a lip and it sends you back. He was doing what is called the 6-second physical. The actual examination began as soon as you get off the boat. All the immigrants coming off the boat, they have their bags. Alex has 2 big luggage bags. You know, some of these people were bringing their entire families. They were inspectors standing on an overpass watching you come off the boat and then go up the staircases to the second floor, which is where the registry hall was at Ellis Island. They're watching you there to see if you're huffing and puffing, to see if you need to stop or if you can make the walk, to see if you have any obvious heart problems. And they would pull you out of line right there before you even see anyone. So that's where the examination even begins. Then once you get into the hall, you go through this 6-second physical. The 6 seconds was the estimated time with the amount of immigrants that they had to process every single day. They roughly estimated they had about 6 seconds to diagnose over 60 health concerns, mostly contagious diseases, but they were also looking for pregnancy, which is weird to think of pregnancy as a contagious disease or as a troubling disease, but it was a concern from them. And then there were these elaborate check marks, which again, I have a list of the check marks. There were X's and PG for pregnant and all sorts of things where if you were suspected of needing further screening, you would be chalked off right there. But the thing that he does with her in this test was a real thing they would do in this hall. It was a test for trachoma, which was a very contagious eye disease, but they do it in a much more humane way. From what I read, and you know I don't like eye stuff, like they would take, some people would use like button hooks to roll back the eyelid to do the inspection.
Shut
or
up.
like just jamming your dirty fingers in their eyes and pulling back their eyelids to do the test. Very super gross. And they were doing this just in line. This was your first introduction to America. Sure, you saw the Statue of Liberty, but it's this guy sticking his finger in your eye and then checking you in 60 seconds to see if you have over these 60 possible health concerns. Then you went to the interrogator, and that's the man who asks her your name, where she doesn't have a name. The whole conversation about, I'm from of Sussex. Is Sussex your last name? No, it's where my people are from. She didn't think about what her last name was. Royals, royals have last names, but certainly people in peerage, anyone who watched Downton Abbey knows the Crawley family. Like, they have last names. She has a last name. I don't understand why she didn't know a last name to give. But of course we get her to say Dutton. And so now she's officially listed as Alex Dutton. But I don't know.
Even as like a newlywed, I would think she would be like kind of excited to say Dutton, you know, like
Right.
it's a little like she kind of lost herself completely. Now, here's the deal. This was a traumatic, you know, little adventure she's had thus far. So maybe we're going to say like she's super tired. She's very like out of her element, all this kind of stuff. But again, like just simple things like that. Like, I mean, when we're talking about like have a little preparedness, I know you were talking about maps and globes and stuff, but like, know your name. When someone says, "What's your name?" be able to say your name.
She really
that
she
one
hadn't
seems
thought
basic.
about it at all.
And that just feels weird. It feels weird. Because she would have been writing it on something, right? She's writing him letters and stuff.
Well, the tag she has her name written out. And now we never really get a good shot. It's the lower portion of the tag she's wearing where it's actually handwritten and not the type part. We never get a good shot of it, but it must just say Alexandra of Sussex. Like, she never even occurred to her to use like her surname. But she has one. She definitely has one. Even if she hadn't considered using Dutton, which again, as newlyweds, who doesn't? I mean, God, I know girls do this, but I know guys do this too. Writing names on like notebooks from like school about like your crush or your boyfriend. Like, maybe that wasn't a thing in the 1920s in England, but people think about your newlywed. You think about like your married name or whatever, and wanting to be with, you know, Mrs. Spencer Dutton or whatever.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
It was like
I would have thought that would have still been in her mind.
And here's the problem. Because she hems and haws about it and the entire interaction beforehand, we never get to see what is being stamped and written from the medical guy to her and then from the interrogator to her. But here's the thing.
I'd be writing troublemaker.
Yes. So here's the thing. So about 10 to 20% of people in line were held for further examination, either for mental examinations or for physical examinations for illness. But if you were suspicious, that was cause for them to give you further consideration. If you were a single unaccompanied woman, you were automatically suspect. Then you find out you're pregnant. That puts you on another, even more scrutinized list. Now, ultimately, only 1 to 2% of all of the immigrants who came to Ellis Island were turned back, which is actually pretty remarkable that 98 to 99% of all immigrants, some 12 million people over a 40-year period came through. I read a stat. Over 40% of all Americans had an ancestor come through Ellis Island. It's like something like 160 million Americans all have an ancestor, at least one that came through Ellis Island. Only 1 to 2% were sent back. That's pretty
I'm really
remarkable.
surprised by that statistic. That seems much lower than the number I would have thought.
Well, you also had Boston, you had Galveston, you had other major ports, but it's pretty remarkable though. I was more impressed at how few people were turned back. I would have guessed that because of disease and contagion and people running from things. Like at this point, not until 1941 did you need to present papers. You really could just adopt a name, but it had a match on your manifest tag. So apparently it's a big myth about Ellis Island intentionally or maliciously changing people's names. Things were misspelled, but the checks and balances were they're checking in the book against what your tag says, which is what the ship understood your name to be. So if things were spelt wrong sometimes when they were copying it down, and that's where some names were changed, but oftentimes it was more...
We should have been blaming the ship people, you're saying?
You should have been blaming the ship
Ellis
people.
Island?
Not Ellis Island, but actually it had more to do with the fact that a lot of the immigrants were, what the phrase that I read was, they were illiterate even in their own languages. So then you're asking them to spell English and they don't know what's going on, right? So it's a bad system.
I like how you make them sound like they were just like shoved onto the boat. Like you're like, they don't know what's going on.
Well, I mean, a little bit.
No, I'm with you though.
But like the manifest tag, so when you look at it, the back of the manifest tags that she's wearing, it said, when landing at New York, this card is to be attached to the coat or dress of the passenger in a prominent position. And again, this tag had important information about how you were going to be processed. It was translated into 10 languages, including English. There were interpreters represented by many common countries on standby in Ellis Island from everywhere that I read, looking at this. Like, there were interpreters who, if you didn't speak the language, there were people there to help, at least for a lot of the common foreign languages that were coming through there, non-English languages that were coming through there. So, really fascinating system and really kind of amazing that they were able to process all these people. But question one is always your name. You can't stumble out of the gate for that.
No. And also, I know we're using words like sassy and stuff like that. And again, I am a strong woman who will speak her mind, but you do have to be able to be appropriate. And I don't understand why she decided to take the tact of being rude or being sort of snippy back. Like, they're just doing their jobs. And while they're being kind of terse and quick about what they're doing, like you said, they have thousands of people to get through. You think on her end, I mean, just being able to answer the questions, I mean, that alone, being cooperative, would have been just fine. But then, like, let's like not add any extra spicy tones or being rude or anything that could cause somebody to just kick you out, you know? Don't be asking for any additional attention in any type of negative way here. We just don't need that.
Right. Especially when they're looking for reasons to find people. So the common refrain was, if you were contagious or you had some kind of disease, obviously that was a problem. They didn't want that, right? Several times, we don't want, was the first guy say, the first doctor, he's like, well, mongrels and invalids, which, good God. I mean, but, you know, we don't, or the last interrogator she speaks to, you know, we need sick people and prostitutes like another Spanish flu. These were jaded people. These were rude people. These were terse people, but they were also, you know, doing a job. And you don't want to be that person, but also becoming a public charge. This is why pregnancy of unaccompanied women, that entire hall, that last hall she goes through where she meets the Irish Collins lady, all those women in there, they were pregnant because that automatically made you a suspect class because you were 2 mouths to feed, right? We have the one immigrant with the accent speaking to Alex, like, they're not going to let me in because I'm pregnant and I'm alone. And they didn't tell me this beforehand, you know. Now, Alex isn't showing, so maybe she could get away with it, but she can't. But ultimately, she doesn't. She is found out that she is pregnant. But you could see the worry on her face because everything about her story looks suspicious. She looks exactly like the kind of person that they didn't want to let into America in 1923. An unemployed woman alone, now with a baby that America was going to have to feed. This was the mindset. This was the worry about the quote unquote public charge. So she's our heroine. We're clearly on her side, but also you get why they're being kind of suspicious of her, and you get why they're being terse with her. And that doctor, he was an ass, you know, with the racist comments about Irish.
And it was gross. And definitely you're being treated in a nasty, inhumane way. I agree that it would be
very
uncomfortable.
Very
yeah, and I would definitely be like covering my chest, and I would definitely feel like this is so uncomfortable and everything. But at the same time, I felt like they changed her character a little bit, and maybe she was spicy all the time, and we should just take it that way. But I wanted her to use her upbringing to smooth things, not make it to be where like you're going to act like you're going to lecture these people or something in what they're doing. Like it's just not going to fly. I was really shocked and surprised that she actually got approved.
Right. And we're going to play those clips in 1 second, but just one more piece of information we learned here on top of the fact that she thinks she's about 4 months pregnant again, which confirms our timeline that you and I had been working with, which I'm happy about. We learned her birthday. She's only 23. She's not even 23. She's about to turn 23 in a week. This is her birthday. This is like her birthday week is starting right now today. Her birthday is listed as April. She gives her birthday as April 1st, 1901. She's an April Fool for one, which I'm sure there's a metaphor there, but she's, well, the folly of the travel, but she's not even 23. I think we had discussed this and we had been guessing maybe she was in her late 20s just for the character and where she was. She's
but life
young.
Expectancy was,
no, that's true.
That didn't really fly. We knew she had to be younger. But yeah, no.
Is that shocking to you? I mean, she's not even 23 yet. She's just shy of 23.
That's about where I would have thought she was. And I guess makes sense. Again, we have to get to that, like, you've got to break down even that arrogance that young adults have, you know, of like, what? You're touching me? You're bothering me? You know, like that kind of stuff like that. Like even today's teenage, you know, or early 20s people have of being like, I know everything. My parents are stupid. Like that kind of feeling. There's that element to Alex too, that again has to kind of be broken a little bit so that she can like live in the real world here. Because she hasn't really been, you know, she's really just had a really apparently pretty cushy, pretty easygoing life to where now she's having to really learn the ropes of the real world. And it's quite a shock.
How do you plan to earn a living?
I will work alongside my husband and his family.
Enough with the fucking husband. If you had a husband, he would be with you. What kind of husband buries his bride in the hull of a ship alone for a month with the rats and the peasants?
America runs ads inside every newspaper of London, boasting of the endless opportunity here, the welcoming arms of America, declaring, give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore, send these. The homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. A sonnet by Emma Lazarus, donated to raise money for the platform your Statue of Liberty rests on. A statue which stares down on you as you strip us of our dignity and inspect us like cattle. You regard me with no decency or compassion, all in the name of preserving a freedom I've seen no example exists. In fact, I would say this is the least free I have ever felt in my life. If you wish to deny me entry, deny it. But deny it with some courtesy.
No, I love that. I love everything about that. That is some Alex Spitfire that I appreciate. But also, if that's what she says to this man who literally was zipping up or doing up his pants, because zippers weren't, I don't think, on his pants at the time, doing up his pants when she enters the office, if she literally says that to that guy after he had been talking to her, if you're going to deny me with a little bit of courtesy, he's like, okay. And he's going to deny her in any real world setting. No? Am I wrong?
I mean, I definitely think he had every right to give her a much harder time. I was quite surprised that I was surprised when he just stamped it approved. I was like, oh, okay. I really thought he was going to give her some pushback, especially after saying the fucking husband line.
Right.
I mean, I really thought that was like, no one believes you, you know? So it's like, I was surprised. That was one of those things where it was like, it felt like the examination went way too long. And then the approval happened like, just like whiplash. Like it was like, oh crap, it's over. Okay. She's just done now. Okay. So it was like terrible, 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 terrible. Oh God, it's done. Okay. All right.
Well, they're not quite done yet, right? She still has to read her Walt Whitman. But at that point,
no, but you know what I meant like how quickly.
She says, right. I mean, you don't believe me. You don't believe I have a fucking husband. You don't believe my story. And now I'm going to preach to you about Emma Lazarus and the New Colossus and the Statue of Liberty and my experience. And that's going to turn him around. I don't know. It was, I liked the moment. I definitely like fist pumped the air because I liked how she delivered it. I thought it was great, but also in a real world, he was already predisposed to not believe her. And she is this pregnant, unmarried woman, the way he seems to think of her. I think once she opens the door of, if you're going to deny me, just get it over with, but you're an asshole. I think he's probably going to deny her or begin to prosecute for like sexual favors or something, which clearly the Irish woman Collins, who came in before her, clearly had performed. You know, I'm going to work all the trade out of him, she says. Like, yeah,
that's pretty wicked.
I mean, she gets out of this without having to do anything sexual, which seems maybe out of character or out of time for apparently how this man was, you know, doing the work.
Doing the work, huh?
Impressive that a Brit in 1924 would know by memory the last 4 lines of the New Colossus poem. I am a born and bred New Yorker. Emma Lazarus grew up in Greenwich Village. I lived not too far from there for many years. I don't know all of the words of the New Colossus. I know, you know, give me your free, right? You're tired.
Yeah, but this was a huge thing of the time. You know, we know that from Gilded Age and everything. Like, this was such a big deal, you know, that it would have been the talk of every newspaper. And so while I think it's, you know, maybe she wouldn't have it memorized because that's a little bit out there, but at the same time, it was such a big deal, you know, the Statue of Liberty and the gift and just the whole concept of what we were trying to do as America and the idea of, you know, please, you know, send us whoever kind of thing. It was novel, you know, it was something to be like, wow, okay, take note of that. So it's not strange to me that it would like emblazon in your memory when you read it, but for her to be able to just like, you know, say it from memory was pretty wow.
I think it's also hammering home she's well read, she's well educated, she is worldly, because the Statue of Liberty was a gift from the French, not the British, to America, not to England. Really had nothing to do with her people, and especially someone from the peerage and the upper ranks of British society probably never comprehended or contemplated that I one day would be going on a boat past the Statue of Liberty and having to deal with the symbolism of all that. So I thought it was very interesting that she would notice, and it wasn't even a British poet who she was quoting. You know, neither of the people she quotes in this scene are. Emma Lazarus was a immigrant Jew, second generation immigrant Jew living in New York. Walt Whitman was an American poet, you know, who she's going to read, you know, Leaves of Grass in the second from Leaves of Grass. Here's a little bit about the New Colossus, because this was information I found out, which I didn't know. So it was written in 1883. As Alex says, it was written as part of the efforts to raise money for the pedestal for the Statue of Liberty. We know about this, Caroline. You and I may remember from Gilded Age Season 1, Marion and Mr. Rakes have a clandestine meeting in Madison Square Park in Season 1 of the Gilded Age to look at the torch of the Statue of Liberty, which had been on exhibit for the couple of years as an effort to raise money to finish the pedestal, because it was running out of money and it was very in danger of not being completed in time for the statue to arrive. So her poem, she's approached to write this poem, and it's put up for auction again to raise money for it. So it's kind of funny that these two historical shows that we cover kind of were circling the same drain on each other. The poem was actually not added to the pedestal until 1903. So the Statue of Liberty is completed and dedicated in 1886. Emma Lazarus dies in 1887, and New Colossus, which had traveled with the exhibit through 1885, is forgotten. It's actually one of Emma Lazarus's friends, Gloria Schuyler, I believe her name is, who finds the work in some self-published manuscript that she had in 1901 and begins to lobby for it to be added to the Statue of Liberty. In 1903, she is successful, and the bronze plaque that we associate with being at the base of the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty is added. So it's interesting. There's, you know, some 17 years from when the Statue of Liberty opens to when the New Colossus is kind of revitalized and becomes really a permanent part of the Statue of Liberty, which I didn't know. And then also now we're talking 21 years on from that being done, that Alex, a Brit, a upper crust Brit, knows this poem. So it definitely has become part of the American idea, at least for someone who probably never contemplated coming to America or emigrating to America ever, is still aware of this ideal. What did you think of her kind of turning the Statue of Liberty as almost like a negative thing? This idea of the Statue of Liberty looks down upon us. The Statue of Liberty standing in as her experience so far at Ellis Island today of not being a symbol of freedom, but being the least free I have ever felt, the most judged I have ever felt. It was an interesting kind of turn on how we look at the Statue of Liberty, not as this symbol of freedom and opportunity, but as this symbol of oppression that is literally looking down on her. Did that strike? I've never heard that before, so I thought it was an interesting take for her to have.
Or is it like what she just lived through? Yeah, what she's saying is that like I was sold this poem and I just experienced what quote unquote America is like, and this has been horrible, and I don't feel free, and I don't feel welcome, and I feel judged and terrible. I think it's actually very fair. I don't think it's really a surprising take on it at all. I think that most of the time, anybody goes forward in some sort of adventure like this, they probably find something similar. Where if you buy the idea of something by some glossy brochure or some advertisement in a magazine, if you buy into that idea and you don't really know what goes into it, that's kind of Taylor's thesis for like a lot of these series that he does, which is you don't really know the sacrifice. You don't really know the brutal, dirty consequences of what is going to happen once you go on to this journey. Everything looks glossy and nice. I mean, the Statue of Liberty, for a lot of people, I can remember being young and thinking, oh my gosh, she's so beautiful. And she's just like majestic. She's got this crown. She's got this torch. Like, this is a very happy feeling of freedom and everything when you're young and naive, right? When you're looking at it on a glossy page.
Or 100 years on and you look back and your great-grandmother or your grandparents or your grandparents or your great-grandparents with 100 years of haze behind them tell stories of the poetry of it, right? The romanticism of it. But what were they like on that day when they were sitting in the registry hall waiting for their number to be
How
called?
did it feel to become an American, if you will? And you want to hesitate and say, is it negative or is it just realistic? Like, were you being too naive and too, like you said, using your romantic glasses on, thinking this is just going to be oh so fun? And it's like, no, man, this is going to be really hard work. And this is, I mean, if she thinks that what she went through so far was difficult, boy, is Montana going to be a rude awakening.
Two more things about the Statue of Liberty that one I knew and I had just never really focused on, and maybe I had even forgotten, and one I didn't really ever pay attention to. Did you realize the Statue of Liberty is moving forward? The Statue of Liberty is not
stepping forward?
Yeah, the Statue of Liberty's right foot is raised as if stepping forward. I had never really thought about that before.
That's why you can see her little sandal, right? Because her foot's out of her dress.
Right. So you see both of her feet, but her left foot is on the ground, but her right foot, like her heel is like up in the air. I don't know. I was thinking about it in this idea of listening to Alex, where the Statue of Liberty is turned on its head a little bit. It's actually kind of aggressive, right? It's a little bit like the Statue of Liberty is coming at you. And maybe like America is coming at you. Like, okay, you wanted to come here, man, buckle up because it's going to be a ride. Because honestly, everything Alex went through, like, no spoilers. If you haven't seen episode 4, if you've been waiting for our podcast, which I know is coming out a little bit late to look forward, Alex is in for a hell of a time, guys. This is the easiest part of the trip that she is going to endure. America is coming for her. I mean, she has stepped into its arena and it's not going to, back down, and she's going to get a full brunt of it. Also, the idea, people never focus on this anymore, the idea that she's actually stepping on shackles, broken shackles, because the original idea of the Statue of Liberty was not actually one about freedom for immigrants. It was actually a celebration of the idea of America in the wake of the end of the Civil War and the abolition of slavery. It was actually an French abolitionist jurist who had come up with the idea for the Statue of Liberty as to be a gift to America. So that's why you can't even see the shackles unless you're actually looking down from an aerial view on the statue. But under her feet are these broken chains. So it's just an interesting fact about the Statue of Liberty. So
there you go, you guys. I don't want to get stuck necessarily on the idea that this experience is just quote unquote America, because I feel like there's something that's a little bit twisty about that. I want to say that it is also representative of just this time we are in the world in terms of conveniences and comforts and the way that we treat each other, courtesies, whatnot, how a lot of those things have to be thrown by the wayside in order to, embark in this new world, which is going to be brutal and difficult, and you are going to have to sacrifice everything. So I have this kind of funny feeling about I don't want to focus that it's just America, because we know that there's stuff going on all around the world during this time. And this is just one little slice of the pie, but it is a really good reminder that what our ancestors went through, whether you're Tiona, whether you're Alex, whoever you are, whether you're Zane, where the rules of society are so different than today that they just look so painful to go through. But that's not just America. That's everywhere going on right now. Like I said at the beginning of this, no internet, no phone, no way to just easily communicate with texting, whatnot. It makes you just realize how much these people are going through overall, across the whole world. We've seen lots of places now. We've seen Italy. We've seen Africa. We've seen England. We've seen lots of places. Nowhere is everybody perfectly happy.
I think it's this episode,
and it's going well and easy.
I think it's this episode where Lucas says there's no fat people in Sicily except for the grandmothers. Everyone else is struggling. Right.
Good point. I think that's a really, really good point. And I'm really glad, like, I didn't necessarily even mean to completely pull in Luca in my brain when I was talking about this, but you're so right. And again, that's another reason to kind of like back off just the focus on America, but like pull the camera back and say like, hang on, people are suffering across the world right now, and they're all trying to do this better life part. And I know like now as like contemporary people, we're feeling like we need a better life. We're dealing with inflation. We're dealing with all this housing crisis and all this kind of stuff. And it makes everybody feel like, God, we're struggling so hard. But it's like, when you look comparatively, you know, about what people were going through, just trying to keep, you know, a little bit of food in their mouth, a little bit of anything, I think it puts it in perspective for the majority of watchers of this show. I know the real world, lots of really horrible things are happening. But if you're watching this show, then you have enough money and comfort and whatnot to be able to do that. Then this is probably a little, you know, should be eye-opening.
Right. Paramount Plus is one of the like 7 streaming channels that I have to pay for, you know.
What a sacrifice.
It's a business expense, right? But I mean, when they say first world problems, I mean, for
completely,
sure.
Yeah.
In the conversation with the interrogator, I had it out because the entire conversation was like 3 minutes. He says to her kind of aggressively, but off the bat, people come here thinking that America's about dreams. America is not about dreams. America is about opportunity, and it requires you to work. Now, granted, again, like everyone else we met at Ellis Island on the worker side, rough, curt, maybe over the line or cold or abusive to some extent, or just an asshole, but he's not wrong. He's not wrong. And America was going to test you, whether you're Tiona and runs his horse and Pete, or you're Alex, or you're the Duttons. God, the Duttons are 140 years of nature and the land trying to beat you into the ground and kill you. And Elsa and all of her voiceovers, we are trying to weed out the weak, you know, and it will kill you. This land will kill you unless you are willing to work, unless you are willing to stand up to it and willing to sacrifice. Again, he's an asshole, but there is some truth in what he's saying there. You can't just have a dream and make it here. You will get swallowed up by the land and by the people and by the system.
And I think that people interchangeably use the word like wish or dream, and that implies that it could be like granted to you. Like you don't have to earn it, because you don't have to earn a dream, right? You don't have to earn a wish. But the whole point is of this idea that you have to come here and earn your future. You have to earn this wonderful, you have the opportunity to do it. And in many places you don't have that opportunity. You don't even have a chance to do it. So what we're offering is not your dream to come true. It's the chance for your dream to come true. That doesn't mean you don't have to do all the work.
And it's frustrating that he doesn't believe her, because when Alex says, I will work with my husband on his family's ranch, he doesn't believe her because he probably hears that story 9,000 times a day, maybe literally 1,000 times a day in his job. But she means it. And I don't doubt that Alex means it. She is from this high-bred, well-bred family, but there is nothing about her that doesn't tell me she will roll up her sleeves and get in the muck and do the work. But just the nature of the beast for where she is and in how she's presenting here, I get why he doesn't believe her and thinks she's full of shit. But that breaks my heart, though, because I do believe her. I think there are plenty of people that who probably don't mean it when they say it. I do believe it when Alex says it, though. Let's talk about having a marketable skill. Let's take a listen to this clip.
You must display some marketable skills to gain entry. Do you have any?
Define a marketable skill.
Can you read?
I can read.
Prove it.
Whitman.
Just start from the beginning.
Seeking a passage with a bit more relevance to our current situation. Here it is. Oh, while I live to be a ruler of life, not a slave, and nothing exterior of me shall ever take command of me. Re-examine all that you've been told and dismiss that which insults your soul. Which is exactly what I will be doing with you, regardless of your decision. You've lipstick on your neck. Might want to remove that before you head home to the missus.
Sassy, and I love it. And he stamps her and gives her admittance again, coming off of the Statue of Liberty of the New Colossus quote, and then right into this one and the lipstick on your collar. Just she beat him into submission with her wit.
She's lucky. Like I said, she's lucky because
I agree.
that kind of remark to a guy who's in that position, I feel like it's really slim that he actually hits approval, you know? I guess he wants to get her out of there because, you know, I mean, she's seeing stuff. She's pointing out flaws of his. But at the same time, I really winced.
What
I was
leverage
like,
does
Alex,
she have, though? Yeah,
why?
She's seeing stuff. You're 1,000% right. But who's she going to pursue it to? Who's she going to prosecute? He unfairly, I didn't sleep with him, so he didn't let me in. You know, I read his Leaves of Grass, right? I mean, it's like a I can see more about what you're doing and how you're doing it, you know, kind of remark. I mean, it's just between the two of them, but at the same time, I mean, because she's not going to be, like you said, there's no recourse. Like, where's she going with this? And that's, again, a huge theme in this, lack of recourse, especially for women. But at the same time, like, Alex, that was really bold in a way that was, like, unnecessary. And I mean, if he hit not approved on that or rejected or whatever, I would not have been surprised because you can't get away with saying stuff like that in that situation. I don't know. I actually think she didn't learn her lesson there. No, I think she was emboldened by it because she gets away with it. So it probably doesn't actually take her down the peg ultimately like it probably needed to, because at the end of this episode, I mean, she's going to run into a very nice newspaper man, even though they together don't know where Montana or Bozeman are. And then the very nice ticket taker man who is going to give her great advice and sage advice about moving her money around and, you know, being wary of the world. And you see it on her face. And when she gets into the cab from the newspaper guy, she goes from kind of elated, like, I'm on this adventure, that same face she had when she parted ways with Jennifer on the gangplank. And then it slides into this unease when the man, who kind of obviously looks gruff and whatever, and asks, where are you going? And she lies about meeting a friend. Her face slides into this unease that, man, Julia Schläfer is really killing it. She's doing a lot of great face acting and physical acting, and I really give her all the credit in the world.
It reminded me of the scene with, like, let's go see the little kid's footprint, you know, in Africa. And then how that spins out. And then she's like, I don't think this is funny anymore. And I'm in over my head. And this is way more than I bargained for. All of that, it's like we've had these moments with her, but it's like she doesn't learn. You know, we've had her on the hull of the boat where she sees the life vest or whatever, the little life circle, like floating around, the lifesaver in the water, and she like jumps off for it. Like, Alex, you make these decisions that are very impulsive and very without a lot of thought at all. That is consistent with her character. I just would have thought, appropriateness wise, like societally, I would have given her more credit to be able to work people better, because those two situations didn't have people. That was like nature. Both of those situations she was up against, and it proved to be much bigger and tougher than she was. But this, I thought this was in her wheelhouse. I thought she could be charming. I thought she could go back and forth with this guy and really smooth things over. And that's just not the way she acted at all. It quite surprised me.
A bit about what she was reading from. So that is a giant tome of Leaves of Grass, which was a book of poetry by Walt Whitman, American poet. He originally self-published it on July 4th, 1855, but he would go on to continue adding poems to it in different editions. He would eventually make 4 different editions, his last being finished literally on his deathbed in 1892. The specific poem she's reading from at the beginning is called A Song of Joys, which appears to be in the 1882 edition of it. Oddly, she reads line 151 first, oh, while I live to be the ruler of life, not a slave, then jumps to line 156, and nothing exterior shall ever take command of me, and then jumps all the way back to the beginning of Leaves of Grass. She leaves A Song of Joys, reading those 2 disparate lines, and then reads from the preface to Leaves of Grass, written by Walt Whitman. Re-examine all you have been told at school or church or in any book. Dismiss whatever insults your own soul. So even though it appears she's reading it kind of consecutively, she's actually jumping all over 3 different places in the entire tome of Leaves of Grass. So a little funny editing there that I guess you wouldn't know if you didn't have it in front of you. But of course, for you listeners, I went looking. We played the audio clip of Alex, her weekly letter to Spencer, and she says, I'm going to be in Bozeman in a week. Again, we talked about even in the best times, I don't think that's going to happen, but it's the back of it, of that clip, that really is how I want to leave the Alex stuff, because she says, what fresh calamity, what fresh hell will the devil think of? I'm beginning to fear that nature, I think she says, or just the world won't let me get to you. And I think she's very wise in worrying about that. I don't know how you're feeling about it, but that man watching her go into the bathroom at Grand Central Station leaves me with a lot of unease about what's coming ahead. For everything Alex has already been through, I think her journey is only going to get rougher. I'm curious how you took that end quote and just how it fits into the show and where you think it's going for her.
As a longtime viewer of the show, I can't really stomach the idea that Alex doesn't make it there. I mean, it is realistic to the time in terms of we know how many people don't make it to wherever they are trying to get. We saw so much go on in 1883. I mean, there was a death every episode, it felt like. I mean, I think that it's healthy for us to have a good amount of concern for her and know that she is going to run across so many more obstacles. I hope that even if she makes it there, there's a fair shot that the journey messes her up bad enough, physically, mentally, emotionally, in her soul, messes everything up, that once she gets to Spencer, things may never be the same. So it may be that she physically makes it to Spencer, but the person she was isn't there anymore. And so in that regard, the Alex we knew doesn't make it to Spencer.
Well, that would be a shame. That would be a shame because her vibrancy is really exactly what she's such a proto Beth and in the best ways. Man, that ranch needs her. They need her name. They need her connection so she can get her reconciled with her family. But they just need her spirit. But you know what I mean, right? Yeah, she may physically get there, but that feisty spirit just may not. That would be the shame of it. It's not her physically that needs to be there. It's the spirit that needs to come along with. That's the part, though, I want our listeners to watch for. Like, you guys, we may see her step foot on there, but is it going to be the real Alex, the real one that was, all excited to get there? Or is this going to be like some sort of beaten down version of her that I don't know if Spencer is going to be able to compete against the bad memories of what she will have had to go through. And how does she not blame him for it a little bit? I was trying not to say resentment, but that's we're getting there. You and I are grown adults we've had many relationships with people, over our lives. It is hard to not feel resentment towards someone if you were to go through an experience like this, though through no fault of their own. He didn't start the duel with the guy. He didn't get thrown off the ship by his own choice. He's having his own struggles to get home. But how does she also not hold him accountable? He didn't even want to go to dinner that night. Right. He wanted to continue hiding in their room, which again was such a good plan. I agree with you. I don't know. Even if she shows up, even if her spirit is intact, there's going to be some level of resentment here. I don't think her spirit can be intact. Well, she already had to get basically the equivalent of a strip search at, going through Ellis Island. I think she's already who she is already going to start getting nicked away at. And the more that she has nasty experiences with people, which I think is just going to be more and more, I don't know how that doesn't take a toll. It would be unrealistic if it didn't. Before we move on to Elizabeth and Jack, just as a historical matter, guys, if you ever get to New York, make sure you go see Grand Central Station. I was reminded watching this episode, I don't have cause to go to Grand Central a lot because of the trains that run out of there, but it really is like walking back in time. It is so unchanged. the main parts you would go see, like the main concourse, which is what we're seeing in this episode, the oyster bar, which the ticket taker man mentions to her, still open today. Grand Central Station has been preserved in so many ways. It really is impressive to go see. And if you're going to go to New York, I actually saw it's like a top 10 tourist attraction. So obviously a lot of people do go see Grand Central Station, but make sure you hit it as much as any other kind of historical attraction if you ever come to New York. It really is impressive to watch. And the show doesn't even do it justice how grand it is, how small you feel standing in the main concourse. I'm a pretty big guy, and I feel small standing in the main concourse of Grand Central Station. It's pretty impressive. So just from the tourism board part of New York, as a lifelong New Yorker, definitely go see it. Danger and cold lurks everywhere. Nothing like her home. These are what you have to take into account for Alex's journey, which is really just getting going now that she's in America. Let's move on to Elizabeth not having a great day. Jack even having a worse day. Let's take a listen.
Wolves run from men. They don't seek them, they don't attack them, they don't come into their homes. Madness drove this animal, and it will drive you to your death.
It's driving me already.
This is not madness, this is fear. And you need to overcome it.
Yeah, we did. Let go of me!
I suppose you'd have me shoot you in the living room, like an animal driven wild with fever. The world is not a fair place, as you've surely realized by now, but it has been far kinder to you than to the woman lying in the back of Dr. Miller's buggy. That I can assure you. Now, you are a woman. Whether you're ready to be one is debatable, but a woman you are. It's time to act like it. Now, lay back.
I'll stand.
Question, Caroline. Is this too much tough love from Kara, or just what Elizabeth needed to get snapped into place? Literally slapped into place.
I was surprised about the slap, but Elizabeth is going through it. I feel for her. She does need to be talked to this way. I really feel like her and Jack lost their way. Like, we've really not seen them as a couple at all in a very long time.
At all this season. This episode's the first time they're in the same room, basically, other than that quick montage.
But it's been a long time, even from like last season and everything. I mean, it feels like it's been a long
They had the miscarriage and then they
time.
went their separate ways, as far as we saw.
She needs to be reminded. I don't know about this poor girl. I mean, I don't think she's cut out for this life at all, because she is fully in love with Jack, but she is not in love with this life. And this life very much takes over everything. And we've seen this even with Beth and Rip in the mainline Yellowstone show. These men are very dedicated to what they need to be doing to take care of the cattle and take care of the ranch. And that requires a lot of the patience and love and sacrifice of their spouses to understand that they have to be gone all the time, and that they are in this brutal place on earth where like animals and nature and everything, they're coming for you all the time, and people for that matter, people because of the land. So there is a lot going on with Elizabeth that she needs to decide what she wants to do, but she's got to make an actual decision, which we saw her do with her mother. You know, she said like, this is my life. I choose this life. She said it, but it's clear now that she didn't take that into her heart completely.
Listeners, I want you to focus on the end of that clip. Her only reaction to Kara is, I'll stand, with a little defiant tone in her. Hold on to that, because going forward, I want to see if that represents anything of significance that we should delve into. So I'm highlighting it just for you to hold on to, and let's talk about it, certainly in episode 4. Let's come back and circle back with that reaction to Kara's dressing down, if it really did permeate her. This episode, it does not seem to, because Caroline, you gave a perfect segue to the conversation at the end, towards the end of the episode, between Elizabeth and Jack. The first conversation we have seen them have in forever. Let's take a listen.
What are you doing?
I'm packing.
Where are you going?
Back east.
Can you tell me why?
This place is why. This life is why.
said that I had to want more than the man, that I must want the life, and I want no part of it.
What about for better or for worse?
Nowhere in our vows did it say to live in this frozen hell and fight for my life at every turn. It's your turn for worse. If you want to be my husband, be him in Boston.
This is my home.
It's not mine. This place has made that clear.
You're getting much better at this.
I hate Warren. I'm done with this place. Where was that in our vows?
Does Jack even know why she's getting shots? We never see anyone tell her, by the way, your wife was attacked by a rabid wolf and now is receiving very painful, rabies vaccine injections. How is he not completely bumfuzzled about what is happening here?
He does seem suspiciously out of the loop. I don't know why he's not keeping track of his wife at all.
Well, they just got back in from all of the wolf stuff happened while they were out in the snow and trying to get Zane home. So there really hasn't been a lot of time because he helps Zane up and then he's in that room with the conversation about the needing the drill, the brain and the subdural hematoma. Like, I think this is the first time he has seen Elizabeth since they left 2 days ago to bring Zane home. And all of the wolf stuff happened in between that. So he must be completely confused as to what is happening. And then they're coming in and Dennis, the cowhand, the ranch hand is holding his wife down and Kara's giving her, like, he seems like a lost little boy. Even his, this is my home. When he says that to her, he sounds like a very little boy, lost. She's angry. He doesn't know what's going on. I, like you, Echo, have these two just taken such a huge step back development-wise. It feels like we're less than square one from where they were in season one. Like, all of those gains in season one, I feel like we've kind of lost all of that, and these two really kind of have to start over.
They do need to start over, and they have to start where she's at now. Not where she should have been, not what could have happened, but like, where are we now? Like, you have been attacked by a wolf, you have had a miscarriage, you are living this crazy life right now. And P.S., you don't get to be with your husband like ever. Like, it seems like you're spending most of your time crying in your bed. So this life is pretty crappy for her.
She quotes that Kara said, it's got to be more than just the man, right? It's got to be the life that you're into. Like, so she has heard Kara. She just didn't really understand those words.
She agreed to it. Well, she agreed to it when, and we thought that was like enough, but it wasn't, because she really didn't know what she was agreeing to.
Right. But to be fair, even Kara and Jacob seem taken aback by how shitty things are. The wolf being the wolf being there that Kara then kills, or the mountain lion being there that Kara kills, and then the next day a rabid wolf bites her. Even for a rough life out on the ranch, she had a really particularly bad 2 days while they were gone. That. So
yes.
All right, let's quickly hit, because we've been going so long, let's quickly hit the rest of this episode. We have runs his horse. He finally finds the cowboys leading the cattle herd. It seems like they're going to work out a deal, and they actually get to make some money and join the cattle drive. I digress. Let's wrap up to the last part of the episode.
You got two choices. Walk with me to a train station, or take your chances with this truck.
They're my family. Right or wrong, they are family. Look what you do for your family.
Best of luck.
Were you surprised that Luca finds a loop to get around the roadblock? It's a long loop, but he gets one. Spencer's like, nah, I'm already done with this trick. Spencer never meant on delivering this. He was never into this plan, but I'm sad that he is so willing to abandon Luca so quickly when the push hasn't come to shove just yet.
Yeah, I was surprised about that too. I thought he bailed quicker than I expected him to, and didn't bother to try to cover for Luca either. Like, there was I guess they had that back and forth and he was trying to convince him, but it felt like, could he have done more to save Luca? I don't know. Maybe no. But I was surprised at how quickly he was like, and I'm out. Because, I mean, they knew they were going to hit roadblocks, you know?
Right, they had the gun, they had the money. He knew this was a thing.
So Luca's like, this is what the money was for.
Right, which Luca, I kind of get it. Like, if I'm Luca, I'm like, dude, I know you saved me on the ship and everything, but you're really scumbagging me here. Like, we haven't even started yet. This is literally, you are the great hunter of Africa, and this is literally the first literal roadblock we've and you're abandoning the plan. He found a loop. Like, I don't know. I was surprised Spencer gave up on it so fast and so completely and was so steadfast, especially when Luca makes the appeal that actually gets through to Spencer of, it's my family. That's your whole thing is family. What wouldn't you do to save your family? Now, I think Spencer is very right that his cousins, the Macheo cousins, are sacrificing Luca, not trying to share or save with him. They're not looking for anyone to cut in on their action. So he's very expendable to them. But for Spencer to abandon that so quickly surprised me a little bit. And I gotta tell you, disappointed me a little bit.
I think there's a couple things about Spencer that surprised me in terms of his demeanor and his attitude. Again, a lot of charm is missing from him. A lot of the things you kind of fell in love with him initially are kind of fallen away. Now, again, we have to go back to the exhaustion of this journey and just how much it's wearing them all out, all of them across the board. But we're missing some cleverness, right? Like, that was the thing that, like, I always want my characters to be clever. I always want them to be sitting there coming up with some sort of plan. I can't believe that Spencer's only plan was, when we hit a roadblock, I'm going to, in plain view, turn around and just and just kind of park a car over here and then just walk away from it. As if none of this is suspicious or going to catch anybody's eye. Like, that was your whole plan the whole time, was just to abandon Luca at the first sign of trouble.
In the most obvious way possible, right? If you were able to see the roadblock, they're able to see you turning around.
Of course.
In your seafood truck.
Doesn't that statement alone kind of hurt your heart about Spencer? For me to say, willing to just walk away at the first sign of trouble? Like, that's not him. That doesn't feel like him.
That's certainly not the lion that Kara and Jacob think they're getting to come back home. You know, now you got to start asking the question of, is the nerve gone? Like, he's all piss and vinegar. I got to get home, whatever. But dude, this was a fight that you should be invested in. You have a little bond with this little guy, Luca, and you're just leaving him at to die. Like, when you see Luca try to run the roadblock and then his slump form, like slumps over, we see like the silhouette of it. Dude, my heart broke. Dude, like, I'm not saying that is on Spencer. It's not at all. It's on the cousins. But he had an idea to get around this, and you just shut it down completely. There's some Luca blood on Spencer's hand, how this went down in this episode, which makes me sad and makes me a little worried of, you carry around that big giant rifle. Are you willing to use it when push comes to shove?
We can sit here and also think, like, would that have been the right thing to do? Would that have been helpful to Luca to do that? I struggle because I needed a more clever plan than just walk away.
No plans. Spencer and Alex make no plans. They just go off half willy-nilly. You know, willy-nillying all over the place.
There's a lot of willy-nillying.
In Galveston, when he beats the shit out of the goon and tries to walk away, not even run away, walks away over the bridge, insulting the Macheos in their town they control. We talked about this in the last episode. Like, how did you think that was going to go, Spencer? It was rude to begin with. And two, like, just not clever. Again, just to circle back around, half-baked plans that come with dangerous consequences and unbearable suffering. Alex and Spencer are rolling in all of that right now. And I need to see better from them, definitely.
Hoping better for them.
Last bit, because this really is going to end up covering in episode 4. Subdermal hematoma. Doc has a drill, of course. The Doc who is a captive at the... Doc Miller is the MVP of the season. I will not hear any other words about it. This man has been literally captive at the Dutton Ranch with one calamity after another. Has a drill, but has no anesthesia. We're facing down drilling a hole in Zane's head in the next episode. But honestly, Caroline, my biggest question for you is, with all of the death and violence that we see in this show, this is my last thought for this episode, is it believable at all that Zane, who is on death's door, and his 2 little children and his wife, who looks like she had also been beat up a little bit, survive in the snowstorm in the middle of the night, the entirety of the night, with no fire or food or provisions of any kind? They all make it through the next morning perfectly fine.
I am going to go with that they had enough survival skills as the cowboy group that it is believable that they would have been able to figure out something for one night. If it was repeated nights or something, I'm with you. I would raise my eyebrows and be like, yeah, is this, are we really stretching this? But I think I could go with one night. They could make it one night because you're just really, I mean, they just have to stay alive. Literally, they just have to stay alive. So they were all huddled under there and they were physically blocked from the snow and the storm happening. So I like to think that that would be okay and they would be able to make it. So I'm going to give them a pass on that one.
In my headcanon, Jack's giant sheep chaps covered them all and kept them warm. It was actually...
Yeah, they just used it as gigantic sleeping bags.
Chaps. They all just curled up right in his chaps. Just he fit like 6 there. His chaps sleep 6 comfortably. They're so large.
I love that.
So.
I love it.
All right, guys. This was really part and parcel of episode 4. There's a lot going on here that's going to be echoed in episode 4. So this discussion, I think a lot of these discussions will carry over into the next episode as we approach the middle of the season. As always, thank you for listening. Don't forget to rate and review and subscribe to this podcast, which is what is the formal name of this podcast? The Yellowstone 1923, 1883, and 666 podcast. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And while you're there, please leave a review, a 5-star review, not anything less because that will make us sad, but leave us a 5-star review and we will gladly read it on air like this review because I have been promising this and I will finally read one because I don't want to not read one. This is from Erin BK. So much fun. I just found this podcast after I finished watching 1923 and wanted to dive into it with other fans. This podcast is filled with so much great stuff, history, thematic ideas, deep dives, and more. I'm thoroughly enjoying their take and I'm looking forward to following along live for the second season. I also think I'm going to listen to the 1883 podcast with them since I am liking 1923 so much. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Erin BK. This one is another one that I'm going to read because I did not read it last season from Max 2.0. 5 stars, excellent. The hosts, such great chemistry. So nice to listen to a serious breakdown that isn't just a beat-by-beat narration. They give thematic context, and Mike does amazing contextual research. They aren't just fanboys as they call out inconsistencies and criticize when they feel it appropriate. I disagreed with you guys on the champagne belt hookers. I loved it, but agree we need penises too. A little smiley face. All right, Max 2.0. Well, hopefully we'll get some penises in there for you. But, I think we're just about done with
Penises for all.
Penises for television. Y'all got to be watching White Lotus season 2. You got some Jason Isaacs, some Lucius Malfoy penis. So go over there if that's what you're looking for. Anyway, thank you guys for listening, and we'll be back soon with episode 4. This is Mike.
This is Caroline. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.